crime can be hard to comprehend.
My habit got bigger and bigger.
What leads someone to break the law?
The cycle just continued and my life began to spiral.
Right now, there's a movement in many parts of America to change our criminal justice system. This week, we've come to Connecticut. We'll show you the work being done here to help make sure when someone leaves prison, they don't go back.
For a long time, they took just basic education out of prison.
How can our criminal justice system become more fair? This is The Race. Welcome to The Race. I'm Chris Stewart. There are many opinions about our criminal justice system. Some people say it needs to change, others say it is flat out broken. But here in Hartford, Connecticut, there's a group that believes one of the biggest changes can happen the second someone steps out of prison. Asking why.
I stole to support my habit. You know, I'm a heroin addict. I smoke crack, and I broke into houses, stolen stores. I robbed my family.
Is only part of the story.
So we're experimenting with drugs real early, like about 14.
Part of the battle that can last much of a lifetime.
I've been incarcerated, about 6, 7, 8 times.
Was in and out of prison after that for almost 33 years. Almost 33 years.
More than half of Connecticut's inmates are arrested again within 3 years of their release from prison. Nationwide, that number's estimated to be even higher.
You're sort of stuck in this world. It seemed like no one cared. And so why change? Because the world doesn't care.
They have nowhere to go for resources. So where do? They go back to what they were doing before they went to prison. What happens? You do the same thing, you get the same results.
Community Partners in Action helps thousands every year try and change those results.
When you have experienced the type of trauma that many of our clients have, also substance abuse, those are triggers for when you get out.
This group offers programs to help with problems like finding a job and a place to live.
And my transition was messy. The short version is, here I stand, but it was very messy.
And barriers you might not think of.
If I can't get a birth certificate and a social security card, I can't get an ID. Well, if I don't have an ID, I can't get a birth certificate and a social security card.
They've opened a reentry welcome center in Hartford City Hall.
They usually come directly from prison and are dropped off at our doorstep. And we try to have a warm, welcoming handshake so they feel they're coming into a place where somebody really cares.
The goal is to make sure when someone leaves prison, they don't go back.
Options and choices is what makes the difference between a person who breaks the law and a person who doesn't.
I never thought that I would be where I am today. I own my own home. I bought a car. You know, before that, I didn't have a license. You know, no identity.
Today, I came to myself and asked myself, what do I want to do? You want to continue to go in and out of those prison doors, or you want something better?
Leaders are working on the next phase of criminal justice reform. Congress already passed the First Step Act. It aims to reform the federal prison system and keep people from reoffending. It changed mandatory minimum sentencing laws and reduced crack cocaine sentences. The First Step Act also lets inmates earn more good behavior days for early release. Another part of this law says that prisons can't use restraints on pregnant women and makes putting juvenile inmates in solitary confinement illegal. The law also gives more elderly and terminally ill prisoners compassionate release. The First Step Act also requires officers and employees to take de-escalation training and learn how to appropriately interact with people who have mental illness or cognitive disabilities. A man who spent 21 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit is free, and it's because of a Supreme Court ruling. That man told Elizabeth Ruiz he plans to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else.
My name is Terrence Lewis. I was incarcerated. I was wrongfully arrested in December of 1998. Living that life every day for 21 years was beyond a hardship.
Terrence Lewis was 17 years old when he was arrested in connection with a murder. 2 years later, a jury deemed him guilty and he went to prison.
It was alleged that I was a participant in a robbery, a botched robbery that had went wrong. And he found me guilty of second-degree murder, which was a felony murder, meaning that the allegation of me being there, that I may have been there, I was given a life sentence for practically being in the house when the murder occurred.
A witness who admitted later in court that she was high at the time gave false information, putting him behind bars and forcing him to leave his family, including his 1-year-old son.
He's a grown man now, he's 21. I wound up spending 21 years trying to convince a court, trying to convince anyone who, would hear, my cries and my grievances, that they had an innocent man in jail.
In Pennsylvania, a life sentence is imposed without the possibility of parole. But he didn't give up hope.
I had to keep on keeping on.
In 2012, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled automatic life sentences for juveniles were unconstitutional. Terrence was finally released. He plans to keep on fighting to make sure what happened to him doesn't continue with other innocent people.
I'm going to be a voice for the voiceless. I'm going to hopefully bring into existence some type of change, and I'm going to use my story, my journey as a catalyst to bring about it, because it's needed. I'm living proof that it's needed.
For The Race, I'm Elizabeth Ruiz reporting.
Some argue that an important part of criminal justice reform is making sure that young people don't end up caught in the system. Alicia Nieves shows us one successful approach.
Schools and prisons probably shouldn't have much in common, but research on what's known as the school-to-prison pipeline shows a concerning connection.
Once we put a kid into that system, many of them never get out. A large percent of them, sometimes 50% of them, will stay in the system for the rest of their lives. And I said I couldn't do it anymore.
In Philadelphia, veteran cop and former Deputy Commissioner Kevin Bethel first learned about the link a few years ago.
I met a phenomenal judge out of Clayton County, Georgia, Steve Teskey, who was doing a lot of work around school-to-prison pipeline and kept nudging me. What are you going to do in Philly?
30 years on the force, Bethel never thought twice about the number of juvenile arrests his officers were making.
I pulled this data, and I always tell people I was just so angry. I sit down and look at this sheet of paper, and I'm locking 1,600 kids up a year. Majority of them African-American, Latino youth. But any youth, no matter what their race is, I'm locking them up.
Something had to change.
I was blessed to have leadership and then kind of said, hey, Kev, what do you want to do? And that would set me on a chart that would ultimately change my life.
Overnight, Bethel rewrote the department's policy on student arrests. It would take a compassion over cuffs approach. Minor infractions would no longer lead to students going to jail. Instead, a student like Jeremiah Figueroa would go into a new diversion program.
I'm grateful. that was the chance and choice that I had.
Last year, Figueroa was caught with a knife in his backpack when he went through his school's metal detector. He said it was there from a fishing trip with his grandfather.
I thought I was going to be arrested.
The new policy gave the 10th grader counseling, mentoring, and a second chance. He has not been in trouble since.
I was definitely grateful, and I feel like other people should have the opportunity too.
Bethel is now retired from the police department and working directly with the school district. Through his work, arrests have gone from 1,600 a year to 250, and a 4-year study done by Drexel University shows school safety has not been compromised.
I tell people, from someone who's been on both sides, what we're doing to our children, particularly for these low-level offenses, is wrong. And if we have to come to a place where we recognize that it's not weakness to give a kid a second chance.
For The Race, I'm Alicia Nieves.
The push to get rid of cash bail, next on The Race.